Hello everyone, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening based on where you are in the country. We'd like to open up this webinar by first of all welcoming all of you. We are so excited that all of you are joining us today to learn more about the Kresge Foundation initiative, Fresh, Local, and Equitable, Food as a Creative Platform for Neighborhood Revitalization, or FreshLo as we call it. My name is Stacey Barbas and I am on the Kresge Health Team. I'm joined today by my colleagues Chris Cable, also on the Health Team, Helen Davis-Johnson from the Arts and Culture Team, and Malini Morahan from Daisa Enterprises, who's working with us to implement the initiative. Now, you'll hear from each of them in just a few minutes. Obviously, these are not pictures of us, but in fact, pictures of our favorite foods, which we thought would be more interesting. Mine is a picture of pasticcio, which is essentially a Greek lasagna. It's absolutely delicious, but fairly complicated to make, and I'm still aspiring to make it as well as my mom did. Anyway, during this webinar today, we're going to share some information with you. We really want to share with you how the initiative came about, as it's a collaborative effort between health and arts and culture teams, just so you can get a better sense of how we are thinking about it. We're also going to talk about the elements that we consider important in making a proposal compelling and competitive. Now, you'll hear some examples of how this work could look, and I say could because these aren't examples of what we expect programs will look like, but just give you a sense of the possibilities as you're planning your projects. We really encourage you to look at the unique culture of your own community as you think about developing your planning grant application. Of course, we'll talk about the mechanics of applying, how to navigate Kresge's online system, deadlines, etc. We do have a frequently asked questions page on the webinar, and so we are updating that regularly. After the webinar, this will be recorded, so you will have the opportunity to hear the webinar, and also please check back on your frequently asked questions page. On our frequently asked questions page so that you can see answers to the questions. So before we hear from Chris and Helen and Melanie today, I just want to share some information about Kresge for those of you who may not be familiar with the foundation. So as you know, Kresge is a national foundation that's located in Southeast Michigan, just outside of Detroit, and with offices in Detroit too. The foundation was started in 1924 with an initial gift from Sebastian Kresge, who opened the first 5 and dime store, which of course at the time was a revolutionary merchandising idea. He always said he wanted to leave the world a better place than how he found it, and his mandate was to promote human progress. So for more than 80 years, the foundation supported capital projects, which were both new buildings and renovations, libraries, hospitals, schools, museums, and community centers. And that really contributed to the creation of the nation's nonprofit infrastructure. So in many of your communities, you may have seen a building with the Kresge name on it, or the foundation may have contributed to help building it. But if you fast forward to today, Kresge's mission is to expand opportunities for low-income people in America's cities. We do that now through an array of tools, including programmatic and operational support grant making, and investing in arts and culture, education, environment, health, human services, community development, and our place-based work in Detroit. So as we talk today about the priorities of FreshLo, which are health, creative and cultural expression, equity, and economic development, we really hope that you'll see the link to the mission of the foundation. And I hope you get enough information here and get as excited as we are about the concept and decide to apply. So I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Chris Cable on the health team, who will talk about our work and how this idea transpired.
Thank you, Stacy. So on the opening slide, you saw all of us list our favorite food. The photo next to my name was of blueberry peach pie. The reason it's there is I lived for 20 years in Portland, Oregon, and there's this magical time in the middle of the summer where you can go to the farmer's market and get both fresh blueberries and fresh peaches. And if you've never made a blueberry peach pie, I strongly encourage it. So the Kresge Health team works in 2 program areas: developing healthy places, which is where you'll find our work in food systems, housing, land use, and transportation, and accelerating community-centered approaches to health, which is where we support collaborations between health systems, public health, and a range of community-based organizations that share resources and responsibility for improving population health and promoting health equity. The Kresge Health Team has been funding food systems work since 2008. We started our work primarily by focusing on expanding access and affordability of healthy food in low-income communities. Since then, we've broadened our perspective to include other components of the food system, particularly aggregation, processing, and distribution. We've grown to appreciate the role that food-oriented development can play in expanding economic opportunities in low-income urban neighborhoods. And this partnership with Kresge's Arts and Culture team takes our evolution one step further by incorporating cultural expression and creative placemaking. With that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Helen Davis-Johnson.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's great to be with you all today. And since Chris and Stacy both shared their favorite food with you, I'll do the same. Making homemade bread has always been a tradition in our family and continues to be one to this day. But for me, it's really an act of creative expression. And much like creative placemaking, the way we interpret that, for me, bread making is as much product and process together. So the Arts and Culture team strives to arc into the overarching mission of the foundation, which is, as you know, to expand opportunities for people with low income in America's cities. We do this by funding creative placemaking, and I'll tell you how we define creative placemaking. We define creative placemaking as the integration of arts and culture into comprehensive community revitalization. For us, it's very much about being cross-sectoral in your work. We have a couple different ways that we think about our funding on the Arts and Culture team. Our pioneering portfolio, of which FreshLo is a part, seeks to understand and operationalize the intersection of arts and culture with other fields and other sectors. It also seeks to integrate the capacity for creative placemaking within or alongside of local systems. An example of that might be public sector planning. Our centerpiece portfolio recognizes that while the term creative placemaking is new, the field of creative placemaking is nascent. The work itself is not. This work has been going on for quite some time, and this portfolio seeks to partner with organizations that have been involved with the integration of arts and culture and community development for quite some time and are now ready and able to communicate their learning to others. We believe that strong creative placemaking should exhibit these qualities: connect arts and culture to larger community revitalization initiatives. It engages in cross-disciplinary and cross-sector activities. It possesses strong leadership and vision that has an outward orientation. It advances a shared community vision and extends benefits to all stakeholders, but especially people with low income. Good, strong creative placemaking also demonstrates explicit commitment to the sustained engagement and participation of all residents, particularly, again, those from vulnerable populations. We also believe that it should work to ensure that current residents can remain in their community even when revitalization brings new development and an infusion of newcomers. And by that I mean that we really don't support creative placemaking that can result in displacement. Finally, we believe that good, strong creative placemaking should honor community distinctiveness. It is of and with the place that it comes from. So with that, I've shared a little bit about how we see creative placemaking, and we'd like to share a few examples of what has helped us develop the FreshLo program, and I'm going to pass this back to Chris.
Thank you, Helen. So our first example comes to us from Portland, Oregon. Hacienda Community Development Corporation and many of their partners began the planning process for what is now the Portland Mercado back in 2010 with the goal to address wealth disparities in the Portland region and create a center of commerce based on Latino heritage. After years of robust community engagement, business planning, and research, Hacienda purchased an abandoned used car lot in a diverse low-income neighborhood of southeast Portland that had been designated as a food desert, and transformed it into a vibrant site of microenterprise development, cultural expression, and locally sourced food. In its first quarter of operation, the Mercado created 76 new jobs. More than 30 businesses, including those started by immigrants from Kenya, Thailand, Mexico, and Colombia, rent space in the commercial kitchen to produce culturally specific foods. The Mercado has now become a destination for residents from throughout the city, who come not only for terrific food, but also to listen to resident musicians and participate in other cultural offerings.
And after that, I'd like to share with you another example of a way that the arts and culture team and the health team came together to work with a community organization in Cleveland named the St. Clair Community Development Corporation. This really helped to inform Kresge's understanding of how community resources can be reimagined through resident engagement, workforce development, housing, health, and creative placemaking initiatives. Their work leverages infrastructure such as vacant land and buildings as assets to create economic, social, and cultural opportunities for a community suffering from disinvestment and entrenched health disparities. In this work, St. Clair Superior Development Corporation is implementing an asset-based approach that braids creative placemaking with economic development and the launch of a local food economy strategy. Additionally, they were a recent recipient of a federal grant that has enabled them to launch Hub 55, a food hub that represents the most significant redevelopment project in this multi-ethnic neighborhood to date. Kresge's funds have helped to support Hub 55's sister project, Agri-Culture. This project leverages creative placemaking activities to help develop social cohesion that generate new connections and access to fresh local food, educate residents on how to work with whole ingredients, create opportunities for meals to be shared among neighbors, and to connect to food-related entrepreneurial endeavors through business training. With that, I think you've learned a little bit about what's inspired us more, and we'd like to talk about the FreshLo rationale.
Sure. So it's important to note that by highlighting these two examples, we're not asking everyone on the webinar to try to replicate them. How similar food initiatives develop in other cities will reflect the distinct characteristics, culture, partner landscape, and opportunities in each community. Rather, we share these examples to emphasize some core components that contributed to their success, such as robust and genuine community engagement and ownership, the natural intertwining of multiple disciplines and strategies, such as creative placemaking, cultural expression, and health, and careful business planning to support the long-term viability of the enterprise.
And Chris, it's clear too that communities around the U.S. are already using food as a platform for community economic redevelopment, creative placemaking, cultural expression, social cohesion, and health. Sometimes they're doing this work concurrently, and sometimes not. However, we realize that current food funding strategies often force organizations and partnerships to emphasize only one aspect of their food-oriented development strategy when applying for funding. We believe at Kresge that this joint funding opportunity could unearth more comprehensive approaches that could inform and advance the field. This firm belief has led to our goal to support and accelerate leading community revitalization efforts that blend multiple program strategies, support community aspirations, and ultimately advance our shared mission for vibrant, healthy, resilient communities. So with that, I'd like to hand it back to Stacy to introduce our new partners.
Thank you, Chris and Helen. Our next speaker is Melanie Morahan from Daisa Enterprises. For this initiative, Kresge is very excited to be partnering with Daisa to serve as a national program office, and they will be helping us with the implementation of the program. So Melanie's going to talk about the mechanics of applying for the planning grant and some of the details in that.
Thank you, Stacy. Our Daisa team is deeply honored and excited to work with the Kresge Foundation as the National Program Office for FreshLo. Our team is comprised of a diverse group of professionals who have decades of experience working at the nexus of food, health, community economy, culture, business, and policy. We have nationally recognized leaders who have spent years in the field as grantees on the other side of many webinars just like this, applying for planning grants that may lead to implementation support and juggling the litany of issues to drive and sustain impact at the community level. You can find out more about our backgrounds at our website, daisaenterprises.com. And at the start of this presentation, you saw my favorite food, pani puri, which is an Indian street food. So I know firsthand how food can be a strong source of cultural connection and expression. In this role of National Program Office, or NPO, our Daisa team will be working hand in hand with Kresge to manage this cross-disciplinary initiative and implement with grantees. Daisa will be managing the application process and liaising and working with grantees post-award on the technical assistance, on learning cohorts, and preparation for follow-on implementation proposals. Ultimately, our job is to help Kresge implement and make this new initiative as successful as it can be. As we looked through the webinar attendance list, we saw names and groups of folks we've known for years. We saw groups we've heard of and are excited to finally meet, and we saw new names that we can't wait to learn more about. So let's dive into the details of this funding opportunity on the next slide. So we'll start by recapping the vision. FreshLo aims to surface and accelerate the most promising initiatives that use food-oriented development as part of a comprehensive community revitalization strategy. As Helen and Chris noted, many communities are already using food as a platform for development, and we're looking for the projects that weave together food, health, cultural expression, economic development, community development, with a focus on equitable benefits for all. So the Kresge Foundation plans to award up to 20 planning grants of up to $75,000 each, and those grants can last up to 12 months. Grantees will then be able to apply for implementation awards in early 2017. Next, let's do a quick review of basic eligibility criteria. You must be based in a location that would deeply benefit from economic revitalization. Urban, for the purposes that we're talking about, is defined as a city with a minimum population of 30,000. In a moment, we'll share more on definitions. Next, the point of impact here is the neighborhood, which means this is not for regional planning, statewide, or even citywide planning. We're really focused on the neighborhood level. We want to see true community ownership and leadership, and the best proposals will hit a sweet spot of integrating the multiple disciplines and sectors that we've talked about. We are aiming for geographic diversity, so if you are on this webinar sitting in the Southeast or the Southwest or in any of the Heartland states, please know we'd love to hear from you. This is a national initiative, and we aim to find the best candidates across the full country. Now, let's take a look at some definitions. We know how webinars can be, whether you're watching this live or recorded. Some of you may have wandered onto other windows or glancing over at email right now. If you would, please listen up for a minute, especially if you work across the urban-rural continuum. For this initiative, grant seekers must represent an urban entity, with urban defined as a minimum population of 30,000. Some of the beneficiaries may be rural, but the applying entity must be based in an area that fits this definition. And listen, we understand that urban looks different in different parts of the country. You can have rural components, but remember that an urban entity must be at the forefront of this project and application. Creative placemaking, our definition is about intentionality and being really intentional about integrating arts and cultural expression into the project. Equity, we've taken this definition directly from our colleagues at PolicyLink. And economic development, for the purposes here, is about expanding economic opportunity through food-oriented development. Food system is a definition many of you may already be familiar with, but here we are broadly speaking about all the enterprises, processes, policies, and infrastructure needed to feed people in a healthy way. Next, we'll cover quickly that the grant may be used to support a variety of development and planning activities, noted at the top. However, this grant cannot be used for capital construction, real estate, major equipment, research, indirect costs over 20%, or purely rural projects. If you receive an award, here's what you're signing up for. We do expect your organization to participate in a cohort that will convene and interact to share wins, challenges, and information, and increase the field of practice. So this does mean some minor travel and a dynamic level of communication. There will be technical assistance provided as part of the grant, and it will be defined based on the needs of the grantee cohort. And of course, you can expect at least one site visit. You will have to complete a strong implementation plan, and you can expect technical assistance support throughout the planning phase to do this. We don't expect planning to be static. We do expect to see visible signs of progress in the planning leading up to the implementation proposal. And for the evaluation component, we do have an expectation of serious, rigorous evaluation, of course balanced with a realistic view on your time and capacity demands. We'll be taking an adaptive, flexible approach known as developmental evaluation, and we do appreciate that everyone may have their own path to getting to similar points of efficacy and impact. Next, we'd like to remind you about the deadline. It's January 15th at 5 p.m. and we'll be requiring 4 sections of material for a complete application. There's more detail in the RFP. Let's take a moment to cover something really important. In order to apply for funding from FreshLo, you have to submit your application through Kresge's grants management system called Flux. It takes a few days to receive confirmation. So this means that because the deadline is January 15th, you will have to register well before January 15th. This means that if you are even remotely thinking about applying, please register now. I'll tell you that as a partner, we had to use this system, and I'll confirm for you firsthand that while it's fairly intuitive and straightforward, it does take a couple of days to wait for the registration to confirm. So inputting the basic profile information is fairly quick, but the confirmation takes a few days. So quick alert again for anyone who may be on other windows checking email or switched to other screens. Please take a moment to listen back now. Please do not start the Flux system registration on January 15th. It will be too late. We offer a friendly recommendation that you set up and register your basic profile in Flux by December 20th. Then you can upload your application materials by January 15th. From the moment you register your basic profile, there's typically a 48 to 72-hour turnaround to receive the confirmation. Quick holiday schedule note, the Kresge Foundation will be closed between December 24th and January 4th. So if you register in that time, you may not hear back immediately, but you should have enough advance time since you have started the registration well before the deadline. You can start your registration at the website here, which is also listed in the RFP, and if you need help, feel free to email grantsinquiry@kresge.org. There's a wonderful and responsive human being on the other end of this email. So we're going to cover a few frequently asked questions before going further. We've gotten a lot of questions so far. Here's a snapshot. Only U.S. and U.S. territory-based organizations can apply. We've also gotten a number of questions about the types of organizations. While the applying entity has to be a 501c3, to be frank, we're somewhat agnostic about exactly what type of eligible organization it needs to be. What we are clear on is that there be an authentic and high-quality relationship with the neighborhood, not just a symbolic partnership. The most compelling lead organizations are those that are embedded and trusted by their neighborhood residents. Strong engagement and leadership by community members will be key. We're really anchored in understanding the community and how your project will interact with the community. So the exact type of applicant is not prescribed. The applying entity does have to be a 501c3, but different types of organizations can be partners included in that application. We're offering some guidance on the length of the proposal to remain under 10 pages, although the Flux system has no word limit. And lastly, we talked about integrating across different disciplines. If you're not already there, don't worry. That's what this initiative is about and can help you do. Maybe you have a vision that's aligned with FreshLo, but you don't have the right partners. Well, the planning period can be used as a way to develop new partnerships. Show us in your proposal how this opportunity can help you grow. So I'll hand it back to Stacy for a Q&A.
Thank you, Chris and Helen and Melanie, for sharing all the information about the planning grant process, and want to thank all the other people who helped us behind the scenes as well. We really hope that you've had a good sense of the project and that you'll consider applying. If you do have questions, you can feel free to contact us at freshlo@kresge.org. So thank you all very much for being with us today.